Where have I been? If I'm ever away for a prolonged amount of time, it's because of school. And the only way that can stop is if you get rid of the education system in Scotland. Something tells me that ain't gonna happen. But don't fear, I am back, even though I never left, and I'm here to talk about the best and briefly point out what the worst are. I mean, the worst are so bad this year, that they just don't deserve to be talked about. 2011 is shaping up to be a pretty damn good movie season so far. There's plenty of films that have come out which I've not been able to see yet, which I'm still getting really excited for and will wait for on DVD. And there are plenty of films actually coming out already, because Cannes has just finished, so that means we have plenty of films now to look forward to, no matter what you think of Cannes. If it's just a publicity place for paparazzi and celebrities to get in reveal and closer and whatever's in the toilet. Honestly, if you go into my toilet, which you should never do, there is a library of reveal, heat, closer, more, and now Cannes has finished, so we have plenty of films now to look forward to. There's The Tree of Life, there's the new Pedro Almodovar film, The Skin I Live In, there's the new Takeshi Miike film, even though 13 Assassins has just come out, which I missed, which I hugely regret. There was Melancholia, where Lars von Trier has finally announced he is a Nazi. I've been waiting for that moment all my life. Before I get into the list of the top 10, because I actually am for once going to discuss why I like these films, sort of, or at least try amateurishly. But before I get into the top 10, I'm going to say a couple of honourable mentions, literally a couple, two. Scream 4 is one of my honourable mentions, down to the fact that it was just so much fun. You know, it was a film that said, hey, we can make a decent Scream film without trying to be like, you know, the Saw franchise, which I actually think Scream is actually starting to turn into, because there's going to be a Scream 5, sadly. And my other honourable mention is Black Swan. The thing is, I really enjoyed Black Swan. I just haven't made my mind up about it, and I need to see it again, but it's far too expensive to buy on DVD or Blu-ray, and I'm not paying about what, it would be about $35 in America, let's just put it that way. Anyone who has enough money, $35 or £20, to actually spend on a film has too much money. You should give it to me. So until I can see the film again, it shall always be an honourable mention. My number 10 pick is a tie between Cave of Forgotten Dreams and A Bell. Cave of Forgotten Dreams is the new Werner Herzog documentary about a bunch of caves in France. Can't remember their name, have not researched it. And he goes in for the first time ever into this cave with a 3D camera. What this documentary basically is a documentary about the foundations of art. What I find so interesting about Cave of Forgotten Dreams is that what Werner Herzog actually does with his nonsensical, famous ramblings about all these drawings is that he's actually made a contemporary art film. It starts off more as a documentary, but then starts to bring on its own coherent narrative. It has its own soundtrack, it has its storyline, it has its characters. It actually becomes a fully fledged, contemporary film, what we would see as a normal film. But the more interesting part is near the end, when he just lets it all kind of hang loose. He has a beautiful contemporary orchestral soundtrack, which then collides with the paintings as sort of the narrative structure and showing that, this was the beginning and the foundations of art. And then you have Werner Herzog with his camera, and that's just the vision of modern day art, I think. When I actually came out of the film, the person next to me kind of perfectly summed up the film in one word. The person I went with just said, it's relaxing. And I think that's the perfect thing to call Cave of Forgotten Dreams. My other pick was a film called A Bell, which is a comedy. It's one of the funniest films I've seen in ages, and it's a really original comedy about a boy who comes out of a woman's mental institute, basically. After 2 years, he's about, 7 years old, and at that point he thinks that he is the man of the house when he comes back home to his mum, basically, because his dad's left. And at that point, he thinks he's the man of the house and has to protect them, and he looks after his brother and sister, and he looks after his mum, and goes into bed with mum, and acts as the father, and tries and be the breadwinner as well. So I think A Bell is an incredibly funny, very original, and offbeat and off-kilter kind of comedy that I've never seen anything quite like A Bell. My number 9 pick is a complete surprise. It's The Lincoln Lawyer, which is a good Matthew McConaughey film. I never thought I would say that. How would I describe The Lincoln Lawyer in short? It's a really, really good page turner. The Lincoln Lawyer basically acts like that page turner. It has all the same tropes that you would expect from it, and for people who are looking for that type of page turner, the film works in the most entertaining way possible. The Lincoln Lawyer is incredibly predictable, you can't get past that, but it's also incredibly well written and incredibly well acted. And I can honestly say, this is the only film I've seen where Matthew McConaughey is allowed to take off his top for a point. My number 8 pick is My Dog Tulip. My Dog Tulip is just this really wonderfully sweet, gentle, kind, and really moving and really funny film about a character called Joe. Joe is basically a git, and he can't find anyone else who he connects with, and he finds this dog who basically acts as a human companion. He's been looking for people to share his life with, but he's found absolutely no one. Either they're too tall, too small, too incompetent, too self-indulgent, or finally too independent. But then he finds Tulip, the dog, who basically becomes almost a wife to him. When I was going into My Dog Tulip, I thought I was going to get The Illusionist all over again, a film I liked, but it just lacked dramatic touch throughout. My Dog Tulip had everything I sort of missed from The Illusionist. It's a beautifully drawn film, but it's also really engaging, really moving, and really, really touching most of the time. But it's also incredibly funny, so it works as this sort of feel-good, perversely animated film. I've never said that before. My number 7 pick is for pure art house fans. It's Meek's Cutoff. Meek's Cutoff centers around a family on the Oregon Trail in the 19th century when they were basically moving from town to town and trying to start a new life. And this character called Meek, who is basically Mr. Growly, I am John Wayne and I am going to take you where you need to be. I don't even know where I be going. And he promises this family, and the other family is played by Paul Dano, to go along on this trail because it will take them to where they can start a new life. With Meek's Cutoff, you can take it as many things. People have said that it's a political allegorical message about the Bush administration. Meek is George Bush taking a pre-war America into the state that it has become. It's probably too rich in its political allegorical message. And of course you've got the idea of pro-feminism. This is a genre that is mostly overbeared with male antagonists, and this time it's showing males as fairly stupid, fairly tepid, and half the time is showing the woman as the archetypal hero. When I went and saw it, I was expecting almost like an art house history lesson, almost, but it turned out to be something completely different. It was a film I was more interested in by the director, and it was a film that basically had craft, and I was interested in the craft, while I was interested in the whole technique behind the film, because I find the film completely fascinating on that level and really clever on that level. I was watching this incredibly clever, well acted, incredibly beautiful looking film for art house connoisseurs, but with also an attachment for us to get connected to, not just something very pretty to look at. Because there's a point in the film where just small things have a big impact in this film, and you jump out of your seat. And we all did in the cinema. We all jumped out of our seat when something that threatens their lives happens. For the patient viewer, this is a must-see, and for art house fans, jump out your seats and go see it. I'm not a person who's against popular films. I think people got a really wrong impression of me last year, because I don't like Inception. I think it's a pretty poorly conceived film, and I wasn't the biggest fan of The Social Network last year. However, I am not a person who is against popular films, and I really, really enjoyed my number 6 pick, which is 127 Hours. 127 Hours became this incredibly famous film for one reason, because it had a severing of the arm. But what I got out of it was a strangely compelling and strangely uplifting film by the end. And I haven't seen a feel-good film like 127 Hours because it is so unbearable at times. And the film is always entertaining and always engaging because you have these two different cinematographers going on. So when one part of the day ends, the other part begins with a different cinematographer. So the film is completely entertaining, always engaging, and by the end incredibly uplifting for some profound reason. My number 5 pick is Bend a Billy, and it's about these documentary filmmakers who went to Africa to make a documentary about ethnic music and different music which we just don't hear. and they actually found these polio victims who were in wheelchairs and just coming together as a group and as almost like a family to play this music every week. And it basically follows their journey from being a street band, becoming famous and playing in concerts, and how these filmmakers are going to try and have a CD for them. They're going to pay for a studio recording. How can I describe Bendability? It's just really wonderfully uplifting. When I came out the cinema, where I was the only one again, I felt better. And for a music documentary, it's got some really good music. It's got these characters who come in with different instruments which we've just never heard. There's this character who's got this this tin with a stick, and it's got a wire, and it just plays this really unbelievably different sound, like a one-string guitar basically. It's a really wonderfully uplifting film, and you'll feel better after coming out of it, I promise that. My number 4 pick is Blue Valentine. Blue Valentine, of course, stars Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams about the ups and downs of a marriage over about a period of 3 years. Blue Valentine is a really, really powerful film, and I find it kind of controversial, not on the film's part, because I don't find much controversial about Blue Valentine. I find it controversial on the MPAA's part, that they would try and almost diminish and get rid of a film that shows marriage, life, human actions, human interactions in a very aggressive and violent manner, and in a very raw and pure manner. And without Michelle Williams and Ryan Gosling giving, two of the best performances you're going to see all year, you wouldn't have been able to make what I would call Blue Valentine as a very pure love story. My number 3 pick is Rango. Rango is a film that does so much for animation films. It does so much for action films. It does so much for live action films. It does so much for comedies. Of course, Rango has maybe a bit more of attraction to adults, and the only thing I can find wrong with Rango is the fact that its audience may be, it may be misjudged. Kids are going to come out baffled, adults are going to come out laughing. It's sophisticatedly funny, and it's well written, it's well rounded, and it's really, really entertaining. My number 2 pick is Animal Kingdom. Animal Kingdom, of course, is the Australian hit, I guess. It's the gangster film about a young teenager who basically gets groped into this family business, shall we call it? And terrible things start to happen, and he starts to get invested into it, and he tries to get out of it, and bad things happen to the people he loves and knows. He's trying to show that almost too knowingly that people are like animals. This is a dog-eat-dog world. For me, that might be a bit too deliberate, but Animal Kingdom was a completely thrilling film from start to finish, and it was basically when I came out thinking, right, that's the Australian Goodfellas. My number 1 pick will not have a drum roll, but it shall have a tie. I cannot make my mind up between these two films, so I'm just going to have them both at number 1. My number 1 pick is True Grit and Submarine. True Grit, of course, is the Coen Brothers film that needs no introduction. It blew my expectations. I did not expect to like it as much as I did. Submarine is the one probably no one knows about, but Submarine is a British film that basically says to the British film industry, give yourself a bit of imagination. I will not get deep into Submarine, but all I will say is go and see it. You need to see it. So now we get into the worst films of the year. We'll just do it briefly. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You need it a bit slower than that? Fine. Slow motion. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So in this list we have had 2 Michelle Williams films, 2 westerns, 2 animations, 2 documentaries. We've had just about 2 of everything. Feel free to comment on your favourite films of the year. Comment on mine if you like. And I think that's about it. I'll tell you what's going to be happening with this channel. Not much really. But I'm going to have a new section called Some World Movies. Basically Asia and some really creepy horror films to start off with. So I'm guessing I can just go now. I've been sitting here for 45 minutes basically talking rubbish mostly. None of it's going to really get into the video. Please tell me this video was short. Ugh.